Good morning, everyone. Happy to see that there's still people alive after yesterday. So my talk, as you can see, is how to bridge the financing gap for deep tech commercialization. So we need to build bridges that connect the research world with the market. That is basically deep tech, because if you're familiar with this, you probably know that there's a valley of death right in the middle. If you spot well the image, probably you see some of the startups last night, they're there. But in general, this valley of death is related to funding. And what I'm going to talk about, it's about public grants. So, it is a fact, after several studies and years, that deep tech companies perform better than traditional tech ones. There is a McKinsey study that says that around the EIR average, more or less, for deep tech companies is at 16%, 1/6, versus traditional tech, which the return of the investment, it's 10%. But yet, we have some problems. So deep tech companies miss certain aspects that their traditional counterparts or fellows in the startup world already have. So, there is more failure in pre-seed stages in deep tech companies. Did you know that? So, also another study, this time from Boston Consulting Group, said that 90% of the startups in deep tech fail in pre-seed series. While if we compare that with their counterparts in the usual tech scene, we're just having an 80% failure rate. So that's the big problem, initially speaking. Pre-seed stage, more failure. Second problem, they need more funding. Why is that? There's another study that analyzed the time a company needs to have incoming revenues of 5 million euros. And in order to achieve that milestone, they compared deep tech versus traditional tech. And it happened that they need 40 to 48% more funding, a deep tech company, than a traditional one. So that also makes a reflection. They need more money to reach to the market in the same conditions. So that's something we also like to highlight. So there's also another element, which is time. Time is money, so we can say they're both correlated somehow. So we're talking about 95 months to reach a Series D versus 75 months. So you have like kind of a 1 year and a half or nearly 2 years gap between these two types of companies. So I'm specialized in public funding. So this valley of death that is represented on the screen counts with two sides. On one hand, we have the research scene, where you have all the brand new discoveries, promising tech, things that will probably help the future of mankind. And on the other hand, you have, let's say, the more traditional VC world, where you have scale-ups, raising tons of millions, etc., etc. The European Commission has been putting a lot of money to try to close this valley of death and this gap. So how do we take the innovations or the new discoveries that are done in the lab into the market? You can see that the schedule that you see on the screen follows, I would say, a good logic. So first, we start with an ecosystem that we call the EIC. Probably you've heard of it. It's the European Innovation Council, where there are 4 main types of aids supporting startups working in the deep tech scene. So their focus or the narrative is based on TRL levels. That is, the level of maturity of the technology that is being developed. When we are talking about science and the scientific lab and universities, we have these 2 main supporting mechanisms, which are the EIC Pathfinder and the EIC Transition. So what's the idea there? The Pathfinder, as its name implies, basically is trying to find out those new tech, those new knowledge, those new technologies that will change the world. Obviously, this is something that, in principle, it's not done only by SMEs or by startups. you need the actual scientific community involved in that part. Because many of those discoveries will then turn into new patents, will turn into new spin-outs, will turn into new spin-offs, and then the innovation will reach the market. So we have the pathfinder. We find the discoveries, very low TRLs, I wouldn't say far away from the market in beginning. The next step under this logic is the transition. So how we move these new discoveries to the market to be an exploitable result, something that we can commercialize. There are many, many ways in which the universities or research centers will have an intuition that some of their discoveries, patents, or knowledge may end up in the market, but they have the intuition. They do not have a market perspective yet. So again, this side of the grant, the EAC transition, requires the participation of universities, research institutions, the startups, so on, but all together. So it's yet far away from what a usual investor would be looking like. And then we go to the other side, because that's the interesting part from a scientific or from a non-scientific perspective. We've got the EAC Accelerator, a major grant, everybody will know it, 2 million equity free, plus an investment of around 15 million. But that size of money is not for a pre-seed company. That size of money is usually for companies which are a bit more mature. And then, sorry, if they are doing well, they will go to the new mechanism called a STEP. So you see, there is this question mark right in the middle. What do we do with those companies who have just started? And this is where we build bridges. We have a mechanism called cascade funding. Cascade funding is a mechanism also sponsored by the European Commission, in which traditional projects reserve part of their budget to finance small experiments or proof of concepts or pilots with SMEs and startups in the deep tech scene. We have small tickets. We're talking about 50K to 100K, short projects, easy application process, less administrative burden than in a common grant because they are based on milestones. They are non-dilutive grants, which is also important, and they are probably the initial push a company needs before going into this Series B, Series C round scheme. So cascade funding grants are the bridge that is joining both sides of the story. Some stats. In our company, Sploro, we dedicate hardly to analyze all this type of funding and how it works and to help startups to get it. We've been doing this analysis for a year or something as of now, and what we have seen is the following, because the numbers are interesting. Probably we are not talking about huge billion-sized tickets or a global fund of that size, but we're talking of grants which really make impact to the startups at the very early stages. So last year we analyzed and checked there were 188 calls with plus 37 million euros distributed. And this year, until last week when I prepared the presentation, we had identified 85 calls with plus 36 million in grants. So it seems that the trend is growing up, and I would say it's growing up because we have an oversight of what is going to be the future months in terms of cascade funding grants. So there are a lot of opportunities there waiting for the startups to use them. Equity-free funding, fast payments, easy struggles with the administrative burden, and a very good resource for the companies that are actually starting and that they are emerging from a scientific background. I would like to give that jump to following rounds and to growth. So, some examples, because I think the best part of all the talks and everything is providing some examples to the community. So we have already 5 companies which have been funded from Slovenia through our funds. So I forgot to mention that part of our role is liaise with the Commission as well to be the fund managers of these grants. So we are actively managing several programs where we subsidize this type of companies when they apply through our platform. So some examples, we have the Women TechEU initiative, SPADE, which are drones for agriculture, PQ React, post-quantum cryptography, Open Horizons, which is another program for women and open innovation initiative, Evolve to Care in the medtech sector, and PhotonQBoost. Actually, last year we were here with a delegation of one of our previous projects, Empo Women, with 11 startups that were funded from widening area countries working on deep tech. So there are a lot of opportunities. And also, it's important that you recognize who are the excellent partners in here. So you have 5 very good examples from Slovenia you can learn from. All the information, we usually publish it for free at cascadefunding.eu, and it's a very useful resource for all the startups. And last but not least, connect with me if you haven't done yet. So you have my QR with the LinkedIn there, or directly access our Cascade Funding Hub so you can find all these opportunities for the startups. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.